when CIG watches this, right? Because CIG will watch this, right, Yogi? Watching you, Yogi. Here's what we're gonna look like. Okay, so if this is our acceleration curve here, and this is our acceleration curve here for quantum. Okay, so if we have...
Wait, you're drawing a dick? Damn.
Oh, you want me to draw a space phallic object?
Of course. How can you even do explanations without that?
Here, all the little hairs on it, and it's perfect. Okay,
Oh,
fantastic. Okay, so acceleration curve is linear like this, right? This is the jerk profile, right? And this is over the space of, let's say, 3 seconds, right? So in 3 seconds, we go from 1G to, let's say, 10 Gs, right?
Yeah.
Now, these are ballpark numbers, right? This is just known as the jerk profile, right? And our maximum speed that we can reach, again, right? This is an arbitrary number. Let's say our maximum SCM is, to say, 600 meters per second, okay? So anything at 600 meters and below falls into this category, and you can argue that this is what's called maneuvering thrust, okay? So these are using your maneuvering thrusters, okay? Now, if we want to go above 600 meters per second, okay, what's going to happen is we're going to switch into a different mode, all right? We're going to press a button, and we're going to go from, okay, again, now we're traveling at 600 meters per second. We're going to switch to essentially quantum entanglement mode, whatever, right? Let's call it micro QD mode, okay? And what's going to happen is from 600 meters per second, right, to the maximum of its acceleration curve, let's say its top speed tops out at, like, I don't know, let's say 3,000. If the game engine is even capable of handling that, right? It doesn't matter whether it's 3,000 or 1,000 or whatever, right? The point is it's a lot. But from this point where he accelerates from 600, okay, it's a new curve because we're entering a new type of propulsion. So what happens is from 600 meters per second to 650 meters per second, it takes us 3 seconds, okay? So because we switch into a new style of propulsion, it takes us now, again, right? And you could also have this explained visually where the engines on the enemy ship light up bright blue because you know, oh, they're switching into like hyperspeed mode, right? And so it gives you time to, if you're chasing at max SCM, it gives you time to stay with the guy before he pulls away. So if you're within weapons range and he's trying to run away, he's trying to disengage, you've got enough time to stay with him within 3 seconds for him to accelerate 50 meters per second faster than you. And once he accelerates, again, right, what happens is he slowly starts to pull away from you rather than just hitting the tricording thing and then whoop, off he goes, right? And you could also argue this to be a better way because it solves all the problems, in my opinion. It solves the problem of SCM combat feels good at around 600 meters with our accelerations and with our current meta and all that stuff, right? 600 meters per second still gives us enough maneuvering speed to kind of get around and do stuff. And it also keeps the fights at a relatively close area where fights are feeling exciting and they're feeling fun and they're feeling skill-based, right? Now, I would argue that the accelerations need to slowly increase because what we have right now, even though we have 14 Gs, you know, it's... I still feel like the game is a bit too slow, but I'm sure CIG will find the happy balance there, right? And also, because fixed assist is in the game, it becomes exceedingly easy to hit stuff when you're within this, I guess you could say, slower speeds, right? But 600 is good enough that it gives you just enough flexibility to avoid fire and kind of maneuver in position, and also it keeps the speeds at a relatively fun speed limit. And then anything above that max SCM is your micro QD mode, and that has a separate curve because what's happening is you're turning off your MAV thrusters and you're switching to the to the Quantanium drive. And like how we have a spool up for the quantum drive, Same kind of effect, right? So if you want to get into that high speed mode, you click into the micro quantum drive, you're creating a small warp bubble around your ship so that you can, basically go really, really fast without really having to worry about G-forces, right? So you have to deal with G-forces at SCM speeds because you're not using the quantum entanglement / warp bubble stuff. But anything above your SCM speeds, you're getting into basically your traveling mode, right? So that's my idea.
I hope QED devices will prevent entering that mode if it ever happens.
I mean, absolutely, right?
They should stop you entering even subquantum mode if, like the QED bubbles, right?
Yeah.
They should stop you from doing that.
So this, I feel, solves all the big problems. We have a problem right now with people disengaging at free will because the speeds are too high. We have a problem with the game functioning at a poor level because the speeds are so high that the desync becomes really a big problem. So that gets fixed, right? Gabbies, I'm talking here. All right. Don't come here with all this negativity. Chases. You're right. So, and again, right, in the micro quantum mode, you could make it so that the quantum drive is fixed to the front nose facing of your ship, in the sense that it makes your ship fly more like a traditional airplane. Right. So you're not going 6 degrees of freedom because the quantum drive is tangled into the direction that your vector is facing. Right. So it not only solves the high speed issue, it solves the disengaging issue. It solves the traversal problem. It solves so many problems that I don't see why CIG doesn't do something like this. Right. So this is my potential fix idea. I mean, if there's a hole in this theory, I mean, now's the time to kind of, pull it on the table. I mean, this is a great opportunity for us to poke holes in this idea. So does anybody have any holes they want to poke into it?
I'm thinking I need to come up with some kind of a hole. I'm thinking.
Think about this, right? If you're going into high speed quantum mode, how do you pull someone out of this mode? Missiles, right? Missiles are very fast, very long range, right? If your QT drive is on, your signature is bloomed very large. So you're going to be throwing missiles at that guy, right? Missiles should be a function system to force people into a fighting stance. Because if they don't, they're going to get bombarded by tons of missiles and they're going to go flares dry like within no time.
Maybe chaff and flare should not even help them when they're in that mode, right? Also an option.
Well,
like
they will. No,
so big.
Yeah, if you're in a Gladius, but you've basically got to drop all your flares to get rid of any kind of incoming missiles. Do you know what I mean? So, and that's what I say too. Like right now we don't have, like, this literally solves all the problems, right? Like this solves the missile problem too. About missiles, like people complain like, oh, missiles aren't very good. It's like, yeah, because there's no real niche for them. Because if you use missiles in SCM speeds, it becomes overpowered and stupid. Because nobody with half a brain can just like point towards the guy and fire a missile at like 500 meters. But this also there's also now a role for a missile ship in your fleet, because a missile ship in your fleet might also be basically like it's like a force. It forces people to fight, because if they try to run away, they're going to get bombarded by tons of missiles, right? Yeah. Unless they have gunners in their ships who can shoot down incoming missiles, which is something, again, another problem solved with this theory, right? Because you're forcing people into a linear flight path with the micro quantum drive, that it gives a role now for enemy gunners to shoot down incoming missiles, because the flight path is nice and flat, the speeds are nice and high, so it's easy for the game to kind of give you that experience, because it's not having to deal with really harsh, really fast angles that create all kinds of visual desync that makes it look silly, right?
So when you talk about the let's say SCM speed of 600, do you see it being a static value assigned to every ship, or do you still feel different ships have to have
there has to be there has to be variation in the top speeds, but I think that should be based on ship class rather than individual ships. So for example, if you have an interceptor, the interceptor should have the highest SCM speed, period. That doesn't mean that it has to have the highest accelerations. It just has to have the highest top speed, because it needs to be able to close distance, right? but the differential between those shouldn't be so high. Like an M50 right now travels at like, in theory, in this idea, it's like 600 meters per second, right? Or sorry, 650. And a Hornet travels at 600. So the M50 is going to close on the Hornet, but it's not such a giant differential that the M50 is going to be able to dictate its distance so comfortably. Because if the M50 is at like 800 and the Hornet's at 600, you don't really need to be a great pilot to be able to maintain range when you have that big of a differential. But if you have a small differential, then you do have a slight advantage in range control, but it's a little different because if you make a mistake and that Hornet cuts you off in the right way, it's going to close distance and it's going to kill you because it's obviously got all the guns and the power, right?
Yeah. And that's why I initially said that I think that that maximum SCM speed should be dictated by the ability of a ship to accelerate, and then obviously its role when you're doing an interceptor, that ship should have a higher acceleration. It would be kind of more automatic and systemic solution than creating a weird scenarios where a ship would have a lower acceleration, but for whatever magical reason, it would have a higher maximum speed.
Yeah.
Like just I would like personally to see that being more systemic, like having a value logic into that than just arbitrary values input by game designers.
Okay, so we'll leave it here because this is a great opportunity for people to ask questions and stuff. And then Sir Troggy says like this should be a clip for tomorrow. I could probably this is a discussion, right? This needs to come out. CIG needs to look at this. The community needs to have an honest discussion moving forward because we need to fix these issues. We've been waiting too long. It's been 8 years. At some point, CIG needs to make a hard call. And in my opinion, I know they wanted the unified throttle and all that stuff, but honestly, what's healthy for the game and what's healthy for the future of the game needs to come first. And I really do feel like this would be a step in the right direction because it fixes so many problems with the game. It makes it easier for the game to like actually give us the experience we all look for. And the best way to test ideas is to throw it out there to the public and have people publicly question it and ask questions and look at it critically and decide for themselves whether or not this idea holds any merit, right? So the beauties of free speech. So I'm going to leave it off here, guys. This might be tomorrow's video. I don't know. I do need to make a video on boost management and how to do it in a fight, when to do it, how to use it properly, and some tips on power management right now with today's current meta. So that's definitely something I have to work on. Hooray, no critics.